It started off as a favor to a friend of mine. He asked me if I could make him some charcuterie boards in various colors for him so he could give them away to his family and friends for Christmas time. I thought if I was going to do this for him, then I was going to try and make as many of them in one shot as I could. Because I've got such a small shop, if I make one epoxy project or 10, it was going to take up all the space that I had because curing the epoxy takes some time. So I thought I would give this a try and see if I could sell a few of my own on top. I wasn't sure how this was going to turn out or if it was going to be a big waste of time. But I gotta tell you, this turned out better than I imagined. This is how I went about it. I've made quite a few epoxy videos in the past, and I've gone over pretty detailed how I do that. So for this particular video, I thought I would talk about why I did things a certain different way so that I could kind of maximize how I made these and how many I could make, but still minimize the cost to myself. I learned a whole lot about doing something like this, especially doing it in a very small shop. One of the biggest setbacks to having a smaller shop is not having one of those nice big CNC machines. See, those things take up an entire room, and they can cost anywhere from $5,000 to $25,000 depending on the kind that you get. And that was just not an option for me for doing this. So I thought I would put a little more elbow grease into this one. I got a bunch of these 8-foot melamine boards that were only 16 inches wide. They're already pre-made shelves, and they kind of came out perfect for me. The boards I was buying from this local guy in town here are only 6 foot long, which was really great size for me to work with because 8-foot boards are a little bit too long to work with. 6-foot boards would mean I would be able to get 3-foot charcuterie boards at the same time, making it a lot easier to work with in my shop. So that was the end result. The boards I was picking up were already cut down to 6 foot, which was great. And that way I could still get 3 boards per mold that I was making. I went ahead and made sure that I put a little extra care into these particular molds because I was really hoping if this did work out, then I could reuse these molds a bunch of times, save myself a whole lot of initial costs, and get a whole bunch more boards out of these 3 very molds. And you know, I was really happy I kind of went about it. However, if this was something that was going to be, you know, a future business endeavor, I could look into making these molds or getting these molds that were pretty much leak proof, and you can use them over and over. They're quite a bit easier to use. With these particular charcuterie boards, I decided to go with the very standard river that goes down the middle. It's a great look, so I didn't really want to mess with a working formula. So I took these 6-foot boards that I was getting, and I was kind of just splitting them right down the middle. I think you've seen me do this a couple times. I've kind of just ran them straight through my table saw. They don't need to be perfect because the edges usually get cut off. So this was one thing I could kind of get through quick and didn't need to stress over. And as you can see, I've kind of maxed out the space I can use in my shop using these 3 pretty massive molds. So I'm pretty happy with the amount I'm going to get out of my little shop here. I was able to clamp down the first boards, but I needed weights for this last one because I wasn't able to clamp them down. So these were some of these little kind of things I had to figure out in my shop as I went along. But in the end, it worked out pretty good. My friend asked me what colors he thinks I should do, and I asked him, and he said he really likes the white and the black boards. So those were obviously the first ones we came up with. But I told him blue is a really great color and it's also extremely popular. So he said that was a really good idea. So he's gonna take one of each. That means I would have 6 boards left. 2 white, 2 blue, and 2 black ones. If you guys like what I'm doing here, you know, I really try to make my videos as kind of entertaining as possible but informative at the same time, so it would mean the world if you guys hit that subscribe button. It would be really helpful things have been going absolutely amazing. You people have been so great and so nice. Your comments are amazing. They're positive. They really keep me going doing this channel. I'm having such an amazing time, and you guys have just made this so awesome. So I wanted to say thanks for everybody who's watching, everybody who's already subscribed, and if you feel like it would be great if you subscribed. Please feel free to leave as many comments as you want. I've tried to hit up as many as I possibly can. I haven't not responded yet, so thanks again for everybody's amazing feedback. This is one of the things that was easy to do for me, since I don't have one of those nice big CNC machines I was talking about. You see, without one, you still need to flatten the boards, and this is this little router sled I kind of made that fit on top of my workstation. It unfortunately makes a massive mess. It's just unreal. It takes me an entire day to clean this up. But a CNC machine makes a huge amount of mess too, so I think in the future I'll really try and incorporate some sort of vacuum. I kind of built this one just on a whim, and it's been working great for me. But it really does let just a small shop like mine really come out with some high quality projects. It helps make every single board, you know, that nice, great uniformal look, but at the same time each one very unique because of the epoxy pattern. I'll tell you one thing though, this is pretty rough on my hands. However, you just take your time and it's a really great way. A lot of people ask, why don't I just run this through my planer? I've got a pretty heavy duty planer, as you've seen in my previous videos. But unfortunately, doing boards at 6 feet length, what happens is it really gets gunked up in the planer, so that wasn't an option for me. I'll show you guys in a bit because I thought I would give it a couple of different tries. But right now, I basically just had to stick to using the old palm sander. However, this was definitely one aspect of the project. I was hoping I could kind of find a better, more efficient way to do this. I could take these boards to a shop that's about a half an hour away, and I could run them through their wide belt sander, which would be really great and save myself an amazing amount of time. However, that can get kind of costly, and one of the things I was trying to do to be able to compete with so many other board makers was trying to keep my cost at a very competitive rate while still sending out a very good quality product. Sanding is pretty much one of the most important aspects to this project. That's why there's so many levels to it. But, you know, you just gotta be patient, get through it, and it'll eventually come out looking great. I decided it was time to get these boards down to the right size. My saw wasn't quite big enough, so you know, you just gotta flip it over, get that other side cut. You don't get the most cleanest cut in the world. It's almost unnoticeable what you get, that if it's a little off, but since you're going to be sanding so much more and routing the edges and everything, it doesn't really make a difference if it's not 100%, but they tend to come out pretty good as it is. This part worked out really well. I got 9 exactly even cut boards, which all 9 of them came out looking pretty great. I was a little worried that some of them might not look as good as the others, which is something that did happen in some of the future ones, but these ones for my first shot came out really good. I decided to make this template so I could add in a handle. Some of my other videos on my other boards, I basically just made them either square or rectangle. A lot of people have been asking me why don't I add handles into them, so after that many people asked, I figured they really do want to see a little more shape into the epoxy boards that I've been doing. So I cut this 1/8 inch MDF board into this nice little shape that at least I thought it was, and my friend that was asking me for these was really happy with the shape of this template. However, to adhere it to the board, I use this double-sided tape, which a lot of woodworkers do. It's extremely time-consuming, it's very annoying. It does work, but I thought to myself, since I was going to be doing 9 of these every time, that maybe I could try and find a more efficient way to do this, because this double-sided tape is actually kind of pricey. I think one roll is something like $9 to $12 or something like that, and I needed to use at least 2 rolls to tape this thing down so many times. And you need to make sure it's really stuck to the board, because as you can see, as you route the final shape into it, you're pressing against the board pretty hard, so you need a better quality double-sided tape to make sure it doesn't kind of fly off. You can actually injure yourself if you do. So this one did work out really well. However, as I was doing these, I was always going over in my head how I could make it more efficient. Like this process here, as I tried to route out the handle part, I found it really difficult to just route out the shape like that, although my bit had no problem getting through this piece. As you can see, like a volcano eruption of white epoxy kind of came out. So I had to stop and vacuum it all out. I decided that after this round of boards, if I decided to try this again, I'd probably go ahead and cut most of that stuff out first with either maybe a jigsaw or my bandsaw. However, whichever way I go about it, I definitely would need to cut it out. But for right now, definitely worked out. Once I peeled this board off, it was pretty good. I was really happy with the quality of the board, so I could definitely use this one over and over. I wouldn't have to make multiple ones. However, again, this tape just worked great for one, but for multiple, there's gotta be a better way. So I was kind of thinking about that as I did this. But for right now, as you can see, really did work out good. So it was a little time consuming with the tape, but in the end, every single one, although each epoxy pattern was absolutely unique, each board came out looking great, so that when I would tell people about the boards, I could give each one the exact dimension. And you know, I was still able to hammer these out in a pretty quick amount of time without the use of a CNC router. And as all of us know, any kind of woodworking that you hold in your hands multiple times, kind of like you know, any kind of cooking board, like a cutting board or something, usually needs a routed edge, so it's not so sharp on your hands. So I just pulled out my little palm router, kind of cleaned them all up. First off, I sanded them down to about 150, so that once I cut them down to their final sizes, I would only need a couple more sanding stages. I think these ones got sanded up to about 400. It was a little annoying to do them that many times. It was easier to when they were pre-cut, but I could only take the sanding process to that point. Finishing them was, you know, one of the best parts doing this project, and I used Odie's oil. As we all know, is an absolutely amazing product, but it is expensive. And since I was trying to make some money at this, I really started going over in my head, maybe I could find a couple of different brands that were, you know, just as good, but maybe a little more inexpensive, that was still food safe. So this was another obstacle that I kind of had to just go over in my head. How could I make this more effective? How could I make this more inexpensive, but still a great quality product? And as you can tell, these were coming out beautiful. The Odie's oil works great, but it was definitely one thing that I could have improved upon. But for right here, right now, these came out beautiful. I'm so happy with them. He came and picked the 3 that he wanted, and the other 6 were sold in a day. I was so happy that some of my friends were messaging me asking me if I had any more, and they were really hoping I would make more. So I decided to do it again. And as you know, I've gone over these processes a bunch of times, but some of these things you can't skip and you kind of can't really speed up, like cleaning the boards. You know, using this wire brush attachment kind of makes it pretty quick as it is, but this time I told my friends that were waiting for boards I would try something a little different. So I put these boards back together because the molds that I previously made were still in great condition. I numbered them all up so I could attach the sides to the spots that they were originally, so that the screw holes were in the same spot. I could use them over and over and not kind of shred new holes as I go through. That was actually a really good idea because they all went back together very quick. However, this time, instead of cutting a river down the middle, I thought I would try something and maybe see if I could do different colors on the outside of the board as opposed to the inside. The boards that I got this time were a bit wide, so I kind of had to cut pieces out of the middle. However, this kind of gave me the opportunity to make some really uniquely shaped boards since I was going to be trying a new idea here. So I was able to fiddle around with it a little bit, but this way I could make one color on one side, another color on the other side, and again, still kind of play around. This was a great way because this time, instead of 9 boards, I'd be getting 18 of them in one shot with the same molds. So I definitely went with the white and the black again. People really loved that, and they really loved the blue. However, if I was going to play with a couple of the different colors, I wasn't sure how the blue would react to changing the color up. It was already a pretty cool looking color as it was. But the white and the black I thought was a great opportunity to see what I could kind of change. So I decided and add some white into the black so that that white kind of shimmer pattern would kind of be really accentuated this time. Adding the white in, it gave me this great kind of black and white marble look. So if you haven't really played with your colors when it comes to epoxy, I absolutely suggest having some fun with this and changing your colors around, because the result I got out of the white and the black were absolutely amazing, that I thought I would try 2 completely different colors like red and white. The red and the white kind of turned into this really cool rose color. I'm going to tell you right now, some people weren't really interested in it, but other people thought it was super unique and they were really happy with the result of the rose color one. So I am happy I did it in the end because it's a pretty rare color and it did come out looking great in the end. It was a little harder to kind of mess around with, but I eventually got a color that I liked. Since I was pretty familiar with these molds already, taking them apart was not very hard, and they were definitely in good condition to do this again in case I really wanted to try this again. Maybe I would have the same result as the great sales that I had the first time around. Here's kind of an idea of how I was able to make a couple of different colors with the same amount of molds. They came out pretty good, however, you know, as epoxy projects go, you gotta pull out that router sled and you gotta start cleaning them up. But, you know, this time I thought I would try my planer again. So since it's only a 13-inch planer, which is a pretty big planer in itself, I would have to cut these down into the final cut size. So I thought I would try it with one of the boards. I pulled out the red and the white one and just kind of cut it right down the middle so that each of these boards was just shy of 8 inches. So this time, instead of 15 inches across, it was going to be 8 inches by almost 2 feet, including the handle. And there you have it right there. I tried running it through my planer, and because the boards are so long, the epoxy heats up and just gets gunked in the blower. And the blower for this particular planer is insanely powerful. If it couldn't blow this out, I don't really think many other planers could. And I've talked to a lot of different of my woodworking friends. They all tell me the same thing, that they just cut them really small and just do very, very slow passes through, which works great. Unfortunately, they said they would have to clean out each time. And when I'm working with 18 different boards, that was going to be a lot longer of a process than just sanding it down. However, I thought I would give a little bit of something else a try, like this belt sander I picked up. It does work really good. However, I find belt sanders are really hard to use when you're using them on both epoxy and wood, which again do work, but in those situations, they kind of work a little bit better on like a full table, where I was really trying to find, different ways to do it. And in the end, on this particular situation, the the old palm sander was the better way to go. And as you can see with the palm sander, I got a great result. Still looked good, however, I'm still kind of out there trying to find a more efficient way to get these down without having to rent wide belt sander kind of time at a big shop. But after I got these sanded down to about 150, it was time to get them cut down to the size. And the reason why I start doing this process after I've sanded to about 150 is that I still had from 150 to 400 to go. So any kind of nicks and scratches I'd be making with, you know, putting them on the table, routing them, doing this, doing that to them between this process was going to be sanded out within that process. But it was going to be a lot, you know, easier to sand them in the bigger boards. So I tried to minimize the sanding that I could. For these ones I made another template with the handle. My friend was really happy with the handle that I came up with this time. However, I didn't really like the rounded off corners. So I left the corners kind of straight, which in the end kind of gave it a bit of a modern look, but I still liked that, you know, that nice kind of curved look of the handle. So instead of making it very, very straight and modular, I decided to kind of just play around with it a little bit in the end and gave it that little touch of natural look. So I kind of cut this guy out, cleaned it up on my table sander here, and started adhering it to the boards. And this is where I got real lucky. I was scrolling through Instagram one day, and I noticed one guy using hot glue to glue his template to his wood instead of double-sided tape. I don't remember what this video was actually about. He was just kind of using the hot glue. The video was for something else, but this made me go, holy crap, what a great idea. I don't know how many other people are doing this. I didn't come up with this method, but it was 10 times better than using double-sided tape. It was easier to adhere. I gave myself a little bit more time to kind of get the template on exactly the way I needed it, and the glue sticks were way cheaper than the double-sided tape. And now, since I had a lot more playtime with it because it held on even stronger than double-sided tape, I thought I'd pull out my old little tiny bandsaw here and kind of cut off the excess just so that the routing would be a little bit easier. It took I don't know, maybe a couple extra minutes each board to do this, but routing it became a lot easier and a lot faster in the end. So, you know, I lost a few minutes one way, gained a few minutes the other way, but in the end, it was a much better way than just going straight to the router. And the hot glue did a great job of keeping the board held to the template. So, you know, this process was actually kind of fun. I had found a great way to save a little bit of time and a little bit of money on doing this. Which means I could sell these boards for, you know, a comparable price, same price, except now that I'm saving money, I'm actually making a little bit more on each one without having to increase the cost of the board. It was kind of win-win all around. But as you can tell, in the end, it looked great. Clean look. And now I had to see if the hot glue was gonna hold or if it was gonna be too hard to pull off. And you know what? It was great. So I could just go to the next one and go to the next one, and it worked out amazing. After that, I decided that I needed to round it off the edge. Instead of using my palm sander, I figured doing that with 18 boards is gonna be a bit much. I thought I would do it on my little, you know, table router here. I know a lot of you guys don't have one of these. It's absolutely not necessary because here I am trying to say how you can make money in your small shop and not everybody's got, you know, some of these more fancier tools that I have. However, there are a lot of great videos on how to make one of these router tables. You know, a lot of guys make them out of scrap pieces. For me, it was a little easier just buy this guy and install it in my table saw here. And again, you don't necessarily need it. You can do a lot of this process with just a small hand router, but you know, time for me was a bit of the essence, so I took advantage and used my table router here. If you have one, I suggest kind of routing off your edges with this because doing it for 18 boards, a little easier on a table router than with a little palm router. each one come out just great, very unique looking, but at the same time, they all kind of came out like they were machine made. So I got that nice professional look, and at the same time, that great unique look. And you know, the only downside to this was sanding off the glue was a little annoying. It took about a minute extra, but still came out great. And I just kind of had to clean up those edges made by the router. I decided to get this new palm sander, this little DeWalt guy here, and stupid me forgot to hook up my vacuum attachment because I was so used to doing it with my other guy that I'm sitting there doing it without a mask like an idiot. This right here is one of the best things I could have ever done. It's a homemade wood finish. If you're wondering how I made it, I made an entire video on how to do this while I was doing these boards. It is one of the best things I have done in my career to date. If you take a sec and look at how easy it is for me to rub this in, it was amazing. The other finishes I use are very hard and very thick. Well, this one came out looking absolutely amazing, and it was so easy to put in. I'm linking this one at the top right now, and also I'm going to put a link to this in the description. But look at that. For a homemade wood finish, it looks better than anything I've ever bought off the store. It was cheaper to use. It only took about an hour to make. This was unbelievable. I can't believe I didn't think of this before. It came out so good. Again, I'm linking this in the description and putting a link at the top so you guys can see, but what an amazing thing to figure out. I was so happy about this. There's a couple different videos on how to make your own wood finish. I really hope you check mine out. As you can tell, it was so good. And the end result of these boards were so good. I brought a box of them in for my couple of friends that didn't get a chance to buy my previous ones. And when I did, my other work friends just started running over and pulling out all of them from the box going, I'll take this one, I'll take this one. So I ended up with less than half of the boards left to sell on my Etsy page. So after all that was said and done, I was like, man, I might be onto something here. People really liked this new style as well, so I got really lucky. The first style worked out well, the smaller versions worked out well, so it was time to try this one more time. So I put the molds together again. I went and got a couple more boards. However, I did decide to try something a little different. While this pattern worked out really good, I was really happy with doing, the smaller boards. I thought I would try something completely opposite and make some pretty massive size ones. This was one I was going to cut down into two and make 2 3-foot charcuterie boards, kind of like a platter board. I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out because the other boards that I do, I kind of asked people around and say, hey, what are you looking for? And they would tell me, I want this. So I just took their feedback and did that. However, these platter boards that I was going to make were kind of my own idea, so I have no idea if they're going to be popular or not. So the only thing left to do was to try. I thought black was probably my best bet to try for these ones. I was only going to make 2 because if they weren't popular, then I was going to have some pretty big boards that I wasn't going to be able to move. But so far, so good. The molds held up great. They were easy to take apart and put together again. Brought it back to the table router here and, flattened them out. It's that annoying process, but again, my only other option is getting a machine that is just way too expensive, and I don't even have any kind of place to put it. So this thing is kind of like the great equalizer. It really gets you a great product, and it's a great way to do that. After that, brought out the old palm sander, this time with my vacuum attachment, so I wasn't, breathing in a ridiculous amount of dust like an idiot. And it was kind of nice to see that I was really onto something. What can you do? you figure out certain things that help you along the way, and sometimes until you figure something else out, I kind of just had to keep sanding away until I found a better way to do it. But take a quick look, and these were coming out beautiful. I was really curious to see the end result of what this bigger guy was going to be. So after I sprayed this guy down with some isopropylene alcohol, I thought I would maybe kind of cut it down to its final shapes. I sanded it up to about 150 again, like I did with the other ones. And I kind of went right to cutting these guys down. So I cut them down the middle, and that got me the 3-foot end size that I was going to do for this one. I didn't think the previous handle idea that I had was going to work for this one, so I decided to go with something a little bit more of a, I don't want to say modern, maybe a bit more of a designer style, I guess, because the board in itself was pretty big and the handle was going to be a little bit overshadowed by the size of the board, that I thought maybe I'd try a different style handle, because add a little style to it is kind of fun to do here and there. Once I got that kind of ready to bring over to the router, just had to get that shape. This was a little more unique to run through and shape up on my router. I kind of created another volcano of epoxy shards here, so I did have to stop halfway through, give it a quick cleanup so I could see what I was doing. Because I hadn't really routed out a shape like this, I didn't want to take the chance, maybe snap something off, so I just took a little bit of extra time with this one. I felt like these ones were going to be a little bit more art and a little bit less serving board, I guess, for lack of a better word. But I guess that's the idea behind these things. It's why people love them so much, is that they're a great way to just add a lot of beautiful decoration to your dinner pieces and to your parties and stuff like that. But I pulled this board off and started scraping away the glue, and the glue would stick to the epoxy a little bit harder than it would to the wood. But like I said, since I still had a whole bunch of rounds of sanding to do, that it wasn't really too bad if I scuffed it up here and there. I just had to work a little bit harder at sanding it. This next process kind of flew by because I had kind of already worked out all the kinks. I cut it up, routed it into the right shape, cut the glue, routed off the edges, gave it a good finish, and this next process just flew by. Finally sanded it down to its 400 grit, gave it my old good finish, and the end result, absolutely ecstatic. I was so happy with this entire process, with this whole thing, how it went over. Everybody was so amazing that I'm really happy this has turned into such an amazing endeavor and such a great thing that my life is turning into. And I wanted to thank you guys for joining me on this journey. Once again, if you could subscribe, if you have any comments, please leave them. I absolutely love getting back to your comments. They've been amazing. Thank you again for joining me, and I hope I see you soon.